Welcome to another video. Today we're talking about flower diversity, still under the topic of sexual reproduction, and we'll be talking about reproductive systems in flowering plants. So we're talking about flower diversity. Now, we have different types of flowers, or we have flowers differing in various ways. So flowers could differ in, number one, the number of petals in each wall. So flowers could differ in the number of petals in each wall. Like we could have different number of petals in the sepals, in the petals. We could have different number of petals in each wall. So we could have various number of petals in the various parts. in each wall found in a flower. Then flowers also differ in the color of their petals. Now the color of the petals is dependent on the function that flower performs or the type of pollination it goes through. So if it goes through insect pollination, it's going to require a brightly colored petal to attract those insects. So the color of petals is dependent on the type of flower. So we have flowers differing in the color of their petals. Then we also have flowers differing in size and shape. We have different sizes and shapes of flowers. Then we also have flowers differing in symmetry. Now we could have a regular flower or an actinomorphic flower if the flower is radially symmetrical. So we call the flower, we could say it's a regular flower, or we call it actinomorphic. That's if it is radially symmetrical. Now we call the flower irregular or zygomorphic if the flower is bilaterally symmetrical. So those are the two major types of symmetry we have in a flower. We have the regular or irregular, or we have the actinomorphic and zygomorphic, or we could say we have the radially symmetrical flower and the bilaterally symmetrical flower. So those are the two major types of symmetry of flowers. Then we could also have flowers differing in the we have some flowers that have all the four walls present, and that type of flower is called a complete or perfect flower. Or we could have a flower that has one or more walls that are absent. So that flower is called incomplete or imperfect flower. So we have flower differing in whether the walls are all completely present or whether one or more wall is absent. So we have complete or incomplete flowers. Then we could also have flowers based on the position of the ovary. We discussed this in our previous video. We could have a hypogynous flower, perigynous flower, or an epigynous flower. Or we could say we have superior ovary, half inferior ovary, and an inferior ovary. So that's based on the position of the ovary. So we could have flowers based on different types of flowers based on the position of the ovary. Then we could also have flowers differing in whether the parts of each wall are separate or fused. Now each wall has different parts. So we have some flowers where the parts of each wall are separate or they are fused. Then flowers also differ whether they occur singly. These are solitary flowers. We have some flowers that occur singly. That's one separate, each one on its own. We have those ones are called solitary flowers, or we could have flowers in groups. Those are inflorescence. So we could have the flowers in those groups also. Then we could also have flowers differing whether they are born on the axils of the leaves. Those are axillary flowers, whether they are found on the axils of leaves or at the end of stems or branches. Those ones are called terminal flowers. So we could have flowers differing in whether they are born on the axil of the leaves. Those are axillary flowers, and whether they are born at the end of stems or branches, and those ones are called terminal flowers. So those are the major type of flowers we have, or different variations of flowers we have. Now let's talk about another thing. Let's talk about sexes in plants. Just like we have sexes in animals, that we have male and female, we also have sexes in plants. Now most flowers that go through sexual reproduction are bisexual. The flower is the organ of sexual reproduction. Now most flowers that that we have in plants are bisexual. This is because they have both stamens and carpels, because the stamen is the male parts of the flower, the carpels are the female parts of the flower. So most flowers have both stamens and carpels, so they are bisexual flowers. However, we have in some few cases, in some plants, that we have either male flower or female flower. So those ones are unisexual. So we have some plants that have separate flowers. We have a flower is either male or female. So those are unisexual flowers. Now, male flowers only have stamens. Those are staminate flowers. And female flowers, they bear only carpels. And those ones are pistillate. Now, as we have unisexual flowers, we could have them in various ways. Now, when male and female flowers are found on the same plant, that plant is said to be monoecious. For example, we have that in oil palm and maize. Now, when the male and female flowers are found on different plants, the plant is said to be dioecious. For example, we have that in the pawpaw. And in pawpaw, the trees only bear male flowers, or the male trees bear male flowers only, while female trees bear female flowers only. And it's the female trees, or the flowers of the female trees, that develop into fruits. So the last thing we have to talk about today is the accessory floral structures. Just as we have the various parts of the plant that we've discussed, we have some accessory floral structures, some structures in the plants that are accessory, that are extra. So the two major structures that are accessory in a flower are the nectary and the bract. So those are the accessory floral structures, the nectary and the bract. Now, the nectary is a group of glandular cells at the base of the corolla or within the receptacle. So the nectary is made up of a group of glandular cells that are found either at the base of the corolla or within the receptacle. Now, the nectary secretes a sugary liquid called nectar, and many insects feed on this nectar, and in the process carry pollen from flower to flower. So when insects are feeding on this nectar, they carry pollen while they are feeding, whether usually inadvertently, they carry pollen from flower to flower. So this nectar helps in pollination. So it's secreted by the nectary. Now we also have the bracts. Now the bracts are special leaves from the axil of the plant, of which a single flower or cluster of flowers arise. So they are special leaves from the axil of which a single flower or cluster of flowers can arise. Now the bracts usually protect the flower bud. Now, apart from bracts, we also have bracteoles. Now, bracteoles are small leafy structures arising on any part of the pedicel. Now, a wall of bracteoles outside the calyx is usually known as the epicalyx. For example, we have that in hibiscus. So with that, we've come to the end of today's video. In our next video, we'll continue this topic and we'll talk about the structures of some common flowers. See you in our next video.